Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford. He is my trusted colleague, Weston Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field. Wes, preseason game number 2 is in the books for the Packers. Let's get right into it. What were your impressions? What did you like best as far as what you saw from the Packers against the New Orleans Saints on Friday night at Lambeau Field?
Jordan Love attacking downfield was the number one thing I wanted to see. And it actually goes back to what has been this recurring storyline, learning more about Jordan Love, the quarterback. Mistakes are going to happen. You're not going to have every throw where you want it to be, but taking chances. And I thought you heard Matt LaFleur discuss that a lot this week. And, being able to see this young man stand tall in the pocket, create off-schedule plays, deliver the ball with accuracy, power, downfield to his receivers. And his receivers at times didn't catch him. That was one part of this thing.
And LaFleur pointed that out after the game too. He said, "Boy, if some of those passes are caught, and there were certainly multiple catchable ones that were not, we're talking about a completely different statistical line for Jordan Love in this game."
Yeah, and since day one, Mike, I've said it. He's had the right temperament for the position. He's a guy that's naturally confident, and he's unshakable in the pocket. You don't see him forsaking his footwork because he's nervous about the pressure that might be coming. He's going to go out there and deliver the football, but it's just about making sure that everything is synced up. And Aaron Rodgers has discussed he feels like Tom Clements coming in has had a lot to do with that. And also just a young man maturing. That stat gets thrown out there a couple times now. When you look at these young quarterbacks coming into the league this year, Jordan Love's in the same peer group as all of them. He came into this league as a young quarterback, and now he's had 2 years under his belt. There's still things to iron out. He's not a finished product by any means. But if you're looking for a guy that's taken gradual steps from 2020 to 21 to 22, as LaFleur said, he is light years ahead of where he was 365 days ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's no doubt about that. And what I really liked in terms of the overall picture of things, and what I think really helped Jordan Love in this game, is I thought the Packers got something going on the ground. I thought the running game. No, it wasn't perfect. There were still some plays that runs get stuffed at the line of scrimmage. But I saw more holes being opened. It felt like when some of those 5-yard, 9-yard runs were being churned out by Patrick Taylor, Tyler Goodson, that Jordan Love was able to really stay settled down, stay into a rhythm, stay in command of everything. And I don't know what you think. Well, I mean, you look back to 2019 when Matt LaFleur first got here, and the Packers really couldn't do much with regard to the outside zone running, and sort of shifted everything to become an inside zone running team with Aaron Jones, right? What I've seen, the joint practices with the Saints, then the preseason game, and even a little bit in practice this week, I think this outside zone is maybe looking better than it ever has under LaFleur now that we're into this fourth year. And who knows, maybe it'll show up in the games, maybe it won't. Maybe with Dillon and Jones, it's still going to be more inside zone than outside zone. But I've seen some encouraging signs with that, and I think that started to show up against an opponent in the Saints on Friday night.
It was so interesting, too, because I think for so long it was almost like the Packers were trying to find themselves with it, that you wanted to go back to maybe the safety blanket of running, between the tackles and everything and staying there. And that still can be really valuable, especially with a back like A.J. Dillon. But the idea with the outside zone is you're able to stretch teams more, get them thinking more, play sideline to sideline, and look for opportunities, look for holes in that defensive front to execute on. I've always felt like Aaron Jones, whatever way you want to run him, I can have the greatest philosophy, I can have the worst philosophy in terms of running football. I think Aaron Jones is going to get you yards. We've seen that throughout the course of his career. He's a big play waiting to happen.
Yeah.
A.J. Dillon is really the one, I think, where the Packers are finding out more, not only about Dillon, but about how he can fit into this offense. Whether it is the inside zone, outside zone, whether it is, getting him out in space and throwing the ball to him. Those are all things that I've really believed are the principles are there, and now they're bringing in offensive linemen that are really learning in this scheme rather than trying to make a transition within it. So, but for Tyler Goodson, looking at him specifically, I thought this game this past week against New Orleans, that was one of his best showings because you were able to see more about how a running back, especially when they're decisive, they have a good one-cut ability. they can execute and make plays happen at the second level. His 15-yard run that got him down to the 4-yard line that set up the Romeo Doubs touchdown, that's about as pretty as a play as you're going to see in preseason football.
Yeah.
It's not easy, Mike, to run the ball in the preseason.
That was a classic backside cutback lane that the outside zone play is designed to create. It was there. He hit it. And as you said, 15 yards, and it's a matter of the timing, the vision. You see it at the right time, and instead of just a 4 or 5 yard gain on a garden variety outside zone, you see the cutback lane, and suddenly it's an explosive run.
Absolutely. So those are all things that are going to be very interesting to watch develop, and certainly we don't know when David Bakhtiari is going to be back. You don't know when Elton Jenkins is going to get back, but for as much as people talked about this offensive line and the uncertainties there, and certainly they need to figure out who those guards are going to be in this whole equation. But the fact of the matter is the Packers have the type of offensive lineman to run that type of offense if that's where they want to go. And I really do believe, as you and I have said so many times during this training camp, there are a lot of good options at the receiver, a lot of potential, but the proven commodity right now is this running game. And when you're talking about best 11, getting them on the field, it starts with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon.
Yeah, and one other thought on the offense before we shift gears to the defense from Friday night. It's a really interesting battle/decision that's going on here as far as the number 3 running back. When you look at what Tyler Goodson has done, you look at Patrick Taylor, his body type, his experience in this offense, having played in some regular season games, really good pass protector. Dexter Williams coming back, obviously plenty familiar with the offense and all that. I think it's going to be very difficult numbers-wise for the Packers to keep 4 running backs on the 53-man roster, so they will have some others, at least 1 or 2 others, I think, on the practice squad. But the decision as far as which one gets the number 3 job and is on the 53, I think it's a really tough call. If you're looking at, say, specifically Goodson and Taylor, they've both been productive. They've both shown what they can do. I think partly what makes it a difficult decision is they're 2 completely different style of backs, right? In some ways, you're not able to compare just apples to apples, because Goodson is sort of the speedier, shiftier guy, and Taylor is more of the upright power back, right? So it's going to be an interesting decision, and certainly Thursday night in Kansas City is going to factor into this as well.
So this is year 11 with me now covering the Packers, and year 12 going back to training camps. In terms of not only just the running back position, I don't ever remember the stakes being this high going into a preseason finale. You mentioned the backfield. You look at tight end. You look at offensive line, defensive line, safety, cornerback. So many of these positions, Mike, I wrote about in our Insider Inbox column, the decisions are not going to be easy here for Brian Gutekunst and his scouts. I mean, because it's not just about the fact that, okay, who's the best prospect or who's the best player. These guys offer different skill sets, different strengths, different weaknesses, different things that you're going to be able to potentially do with them on special teams. And that's really, when you get back to this running back equation, you have to factor that in as well. Patrick Taylor has been a pretty good staple with a lot of Green Bay special teams. Tyler Goodson has been the number 3 kickoff returner in camp. Where do you want these guys to fit, and how will they be part of this program? You have a practice squad now that's 16 players, where guys can be brought up to 3 times now as elevations. These are all things that have to be swirling around in your mind a little bit. And also, getting back to just the pure basics of the running back position, I've said it since the beginning. Patrick Taylor is your quintessential Green Bay Packers running back.
Yeah.
That's the way they've typically had backs here in Green Bay. Maybe not with Matt LaFleur, but in terms of the Ted Thompson, Brian Gutekunst, he is a big back. He's a guy that can stand up to pass pressure. He's going to be able to offer you a lot of different avenues to move a football. Tyler Goodson has been incredibly explosive. Oh, and then you have Dexter Williams returning to the equation. And Dexter, going back to the short shuttle and the things he did at the Combine, he checks all the boxes for what the Packers like in their running backs.
Yeah, he's a good athlete.
There's been a lot of years, Mike, where the Packers have had some backs, and you're watching them out there, and you're like, okay, well, they got to get through the 3rd and 4th quarter here. This is going to be the guy, and we know what will probably happen on Saturday. All 3 of those guys, I could see any of them being the number 3 back. That's really how tight that competition is.
Yeah, I think so too. On the defensive side, I'll say this, Wes. What stood out to me in this game, we know that Devondre Campbell and Quay Walker are, 1 and 2 in terms of the inside linebackers. And we talked about, two guys 6'4". Aaron Rodgers used the term rangy in terms of having guys like that in the middle of a defense and what that can mean. But I tell you what, Chris Barnes, Isaiah McDuffie, Ray Wilborn.
Yeah.
These other guys at inside linebacker are really showing up in these preseason games and really, really playing some good football. I've been impressed with that position specifically in terms of its depth. Maybe more so than any other position on the defensive side of the ball right now.
Because it's also a position where the Packers haven't historically had great depth.
Right.
And I think in a lot of different variations and metaverses and in drafts that you could do, Packers very easily could have went into the season as Chris Barnes as this number 2 inside linebacker, and I don't think a lot of people would have batted an eye.
No.
Tackling machine, right? But then you have Quay Walker fall to them, and they feel like that's a good value at that pick, and he gets brought in. You have 2 6'4" speedy linebackers now in the middle of this defense. But Chris Barnes, you look at how he's played in these preseason games, Mike. I mean, that's a guy on a mission. I mean, some of the sideline tackles he made against the Saints, they get your attention. He knows how to call the defense if it's asked of him as well. And Isaiah McDuffie has taken about as big of a year 1 to year 2 jump right now as anybody on the roster. This is a guy that had a hard time even getting active in games last season. And now suddenly he's on all this basic special teams core units, in addition to the fact he's their leading tackler in the preseason. Ray Wilburn's a guy that's been around for 2 years now. The Packers have put a lot of time and effort into him, and we haven't even mentioned Ty Summers in that equation too. This competition, not only, we'll look so much about defense, but realistically, what these guys could potentially do for Rich Bisaccia on special teams.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Again, it's going to be a 60-minute competition on Thursday night to show what you can offer, because there's been so many of these young men who have really stepped up. You haven't seen a lot of missed tackles from the inside backer position in these preseason games. Guys know and understand the sense of urgency that goes along with this, because it's not just about the spot and the job. It's about how you could potentially help this team throughout the course of a season.
Yeah, well, the other spot I want to talk about with regard to the defensive side of the ball is the safety position. Darnell Savage has been out since family night when he tweaked his hamstring. Vernon Scott had been filling in with the number 1 defense paired with Adrian Amos. We've seen that in practice. Well, Vernon Scott injured his shoulder Friday night against the New Orleans Saints. And there had been some other safeties out with injuries as well. Now this week we've seen Innis Gaines and Tariq Carpenter, the 7th-round draft pick rookie this year. Those guys are now back in practice. Presumably they'll be able to play in this preseason finale, show a little bit of what they can do. But a guy brought in, I think, less than 2 weeks ago, if my math is right, because of these injuries at safety, Micah Abernathy. Talk about a guy who shows up suddenly sort of out of nowhere in a sense. I mean, there's no way he has a decent chunk of the playbook down in the very short time that he's been here. But an interception against Saints quarterback Ian Book in the game. I think he also had a tackle for loss in there as well. You talk about a young man getting an opportunity, jumping on the scene and sort of like raising his hand and saying, "Hi, here I am." I mean, Micah Abernathy is a guy who's going to make the personnel department think a little bit if he can follow it up Thursday night in Kansas City with another performance like he had at Lambeau.
There's so many different things to like about the Abernathy situation. One, having the USFL, that avenue to give players some exposure that maybe, because Abernathy had been in the league. I think he came in the league in 2019.
Yeah.
Kind of went through the process, ended up falling out. I think he was in Minnesota for a time, and ends up finding his way to the USFL. And he said, had a decent, solid season there. Multiple games, started the season, 70-some tackles, few interceptions. But the season ends, and you're kind of just sitting there waiting, like, hey, did anybody notice me? Did anybody
Right.
see what I did here? And he gets that call, and in so many ways, Mike, it reminded me of what Chris Banjo did in 2013, where this young guy comes in understanding I don't have any room for error. I need to maximize every single time I'm on the field. And a few different things, unfortunately, end up going his way on the injury front that he's put in a position to make some plays. And talking with him after the game and him mentioning that, Yeah, that was something that Jerry Gray this past week had talked to him about, because there was a play very similar to that in practice where he wasn't in the right position and didn't make the play that could have potentially been there for a turnover. In this specific thing, the guy crashes like lightning down the sideline, and as he said, he's like, I didn't know if I got in or not, but I was sure going to act like it, just to make sure, and he did. But, like, those are the type of plays you have to make as a young safety trying to make this roster, especially this late in the process. Sean Davis was on the practice squad last year, originally a draft pick out of, I believe, Indianapolis. Ennis Gaines comes back. Tariq Carpenter's the 7th-round pick. Again, a number of guys here that are trying to get those number 3 and 4 spots in the safety depth chart, and it's a wide-open competition going into the final turn.
Yeah, Davis is the guy who now has stepped up to fill in for Vernon Scott, with Vernon Scott being injured, and we saw Davis have a fumble recovery. We've seen him make some plays in practice, so that's another guy who's right in the mix here as well. I'll take care of some sponsor business here, Wes, before we move on. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50 years of better. All right, well, the big piece of news that we need to talk about that occurred since our last show was the return of David Bakhtiari from the PUP list. He is back in practice, doing only individual drills at this point. Same with Elton Jenkins and Bobby Tunyon, who came back off of PUP the week prior. We haven't seen any of those guys in 11-on-11 yet, but Bakhtiari is back. He's working his way back. Christian Watson has jumped into 11-on-11 now. We'll see what that means with regard to whether he gets some preseason action Thursday night in Kansas City. But once again, a couple of big names. The health equation is starting to turn a little bit more in the right direction for the Packers.
It is, and for David Bakhtiari, I mean, what a sigh of relief, I think, for a lot of folks. And I have to imagine, king among them being Bakhtiari and being able to actually put the pads on again, get out there. And you hope he can do it in a pain-free type manner. Excuse me. You hope he can do it in a pain-free type manner because, he's put so much work into this recovery.
Yeah.
And to have to go through 3 procedures to get back out there. And you can just hear him when he was talking to the media this week, how much this means to him and how much he wants to prove he's still the same 5-time All-Pro tackle, that he can be that guy once again. And I'll be honest with you, Mike, one of my big takeaways from practice was just how active he was with the young tackles. He's sitting there working with Yosh Nijman, who's been the, kind of the replacement here the last year, and then also Caleb Jones, who's been a really promising, monstrous, undrafted rookie out of Indiana. And he's going through the reps with Luke Butkus, but he's also talking those guys through them too.
Yeah.
And over on the other side, with the right side of the offensive line, you had Elton Jenkins doing that as well. You need your leaders, and I think there is a tangible difference when those leaders are out on the field. You saw it when it was Josh Sitton and T.J. Lang. You saw it when it was Mark Tauscher and Chad Clifton. You need somebody to be able to hold up that flag and tell everybody this is the way. And as good as Bakhtiari is, he's one of the best in the NFL, one of the best tackles the Packers have ever produced. It's also the leadership aspect that I think so often gets forgotten, and a confidence and a swagger when he's on the field. Now, we're going to have to see what this all means. If week one's a possibility, as Matt LaFleur said, he's not getting into the expectations. With no expectations comes no limitations. They want to be able to get this guy healthy and get him healthy for the long run, but my goodness, does it look good to see number 69 and 74 back out on the field.
Yeah, and what you talked about with regard to those two guys as leaders and the way they work with those young linemen on the practice field, that's just a carryover from what's going on in the meeting room behind the scenes when they're studying film and whatnot. But there is another element to it when it is that type of interaction, that type of advice, instruction, whatever you want to call it, that is out on the field and not just in the meeting room. And the fact that Jenkins and Bakhtiari are both out there now, as you said, we'll see what happens with regard to week one. It's certainly on the table for both of those guys and for Robert Tunyon. as well. Nobody's making any promises at this point. It really is a day-to-day thing with these guys coming off of the ACLs, and certainly with Bakhtiari having the multiple follow-up procedures and everything that he's had to go through to get back to this point again. I mean, this is probably the third time, in a sense, over the course of the last couple of years that he's returned to practice and gotten back out there. So it's been this, you know, stop and start thing with Bakhtiari, but he's hoping, as he told the media, hopefully it's no more back and forth, that now it's just at whatever pace it's going to be, but it's going to be forward.
Moving forward. And just to quickly touch on Christian Watson, I mean, my goodness, could the kid not have been more impressive out of the gates? I mean, now again, it's going to be a process just like Romeo Doubs. He's going to have to get everything down, but to finish practice on Monday, I'm so messed up on my days. On Monday,
yeah, it's the training camp's winding down. We'll get it figured out.
The 2-minute drill, and the Packers are needing to get the ball down to set up a game-winning field goal opportunity. And he comes free off the side, and his leaping ability, man, the vertical has shown up every single time we've seen him on the field.
Yeah,
I mean, his catch radius is incredible. And I think it was Rico Gafford or one of the DBs wasn't happy. He was looking for a flag on a push-off. It didn't come. And the offense, just the way it was rejuvenated there when Watson made that, because they had taken some lumps in that practice. But to finish it that strong and to Watson to show up where he has, Aaron Rodgers mentioned it in his locker too, this kid has been making some plays. And
that was a nice sideline ball from Jordan Love
Absolutely.
in that 2-minute drill as well that gave Watson the chance to go up and make that play, and it was a heck of a play. And yeah, on a day that the defense kind of had its way for the most part against the offense in both the 2-minute drills, Rodgers with the ones, Love with the twos, they made the plays and got it done in those crunch time moments.
And it's amazing. It's 6'5", 4.38 speed or whatever it is. That can be a real problem when you get into a secondary.
Yeah. Well, I'll just throw one other question your way before we go here. This will be our only show of the week with our travel schedule, the game on Thursday. We're going to have to take a little bit of a break here, and then roster cuts coming up and all of that. So we're going to take a mini hiatus and be back.
Mini bye.
A mini bye with Unscripted and we'll certainly be back when the 53-man roster and practice squad have been established. But just want to ask you, we talked about a couple of things already with regard to Thursday night in Kansas City. Anything else that you are keeping your eye on here in the preseason finale Thursday night?
2 things, special teams and Jack Coco. Special teams, as I talked about earlier, I mean, now Matt LaFleur said they have a pretty good idea who their core guys are going to be. But without Dallin Lovett and with some of these injuries that they've had, it's created opportunities for other guys to get noticed. And seeing who could potentially be that James Crawford type that maybe the average fan doesn't think is going to make the team or doesn't even know who they are, that sneaks their way onto this roster, that's going to be very interesting to watch. And I can't think of anybody with higher stakes in this game than Jack Coco, because I really do believe probably with one strong performance here, it may be enough to get him the long snapper job. And if he can actually do that, a guy that, again, was the backup long snapper on punts at Georgia Tech and was the short snapper for 3 seasons before just concentrating on tight end his last year, if the Packers and the scouting department and the special team staff identified this young man and can actually make him a viable week 1 long snapper, one, that's an incredible testament to Coco and the work he put in this offseason, but 2, I mean, I can't think of more unparalleled developments for a guy as a rookie that could potentially be put in that spot. And he's been consistent, and that was one thing they've been looking for. I wouldn't say the snaps are the fastest you've ever seen, but they've been mostly where they've needed to be, and that's been a big issue for the Packers the last few seasons.
Yeah, Dallin Levitt was another injured safety that I forgot
Yes.
I neglected to mention him when I was going through the safety position before. So I apologize for that. But I'm totally with you with regard to special teams. I've said from the beginning, I've said it all through training camp. I've been looking at these 3 preseason games as guys trying to state their case to Rich Bisaccia that I can get the job done. You can trust me. I can be one of your guys, right? This is the last opportunity for a lot of these guys who are on the bubble, on the fence, to whether it's returning the ball, whether it's throwing a block on a return, whether it's going down and making a coverage tackle, whatever the case might be. this is your last chance to state your case to Rich Bisaccia that I can be one of your guys. And that's something that not that I want to see the Packers have to punt the ball 8 times on, Thursday night in Kansas City, because you want to see the offense be able to score, put together drives and score points. But when the special teams are on the field, this is going to be something to watch here, because this really is the final audition for what's going to be those last few roster spots.
And we had so many Nuke LaLucias out there in Packers fandom last week and kind of freaking out about special teams. And it's like, folks, I get last year was not good, but you got to see what Rich Bisaccia is doing out there. Somebody was, these people commenting about they broke a big return or whatever. The Packers had, out of their 11 guys on the coverage, I think maybe 2 guys that were the ones that we've seen with the ones. I mean, he's literally trying everybody to give them the look.
It has been a wide open audition, which is exactly the way I thought he was going to approach training camp in the preseason. He's trying to find his guys and the guys he can count on. And then when he gets that collection of guys, then it's like, all right, now let's go.
And I promise you, Packer fans, you don't even know what you saw. That's the only time you're going to see 3 outside linebackers on a kickoff coverage unit. It just doesn't happen that way typically. But, from whether it's Kingsley Enagbare or Kobe Jones, he wants to see everybody.
Yep.
Because that's the only way you know whether or not they can do it, if they end up making their way on the 53.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that, we will call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the rest of training camp. We'll have everything for you from Thursday night's preseason finale in Kansas City. And then as the roster decisions are made early next week, the 53, the practice squad, all that, we'll have it all for you on Packers.com. For Wes, I am Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time.